Welcome back, everyone. Today we are building a kit that I did in HO scale over a year ago called Fast Eddy Oil Change. Well, I finally made it in N scale, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to put it together. Now don't forget, if you are a Patreon member, you receive a discount, and the discount code can be found on my Patreon page. All right, we have a lot to do, so let's get to it. Okay, before we get started on building our structure today, I want to show you these N-scale sidewalks that are available on my website. And this is the sheet that you get if you order them. So you get a whole bunch of corner pieces and then a bunch of straight pieces, and notice that they all have curbs on them. Okay, let's cut some of these out and I'll quick show you how I paint them. Okay, so I have a straight piece and two corner pieces, and you see they just line up. Now with these you can turn them for either that side or turn it, put it on this side. Let's make one straight section. Okay, first you may want to file the edges. As you can see, it doesn't take long. It's pretty quick. Just getting rid of those little nubs from the sprue. Okay, for this demonstration, I'm going to glue these together. Okay, next I'm going to spray this with a gray primer. And I'm going to do a very thin coat. You don't want to go heavy because you don't want to fill in all the little lines. Actually, before I spray a primer on this, I'm going to add some cracks. And as you can see, I'm using a brand new blade. And I'm just adding some lines to represent some cracks. And if you want them to be kind of wide, some of them, just take your blade and go back and forth after it's in there. Now you can, I'll show you, you can kind of carve. If you go at an angle, and carve away a layer, just a thin layer. Then of course we'll add some cracks coming off of that. Now this will all show up after we paint it and weather it. Okay, we'll put some cracks in the curb. We'll take out another layer maybe over here. So I'm just putting my blade in at an angle, and I just cut out that little section. Now you may want your sidewalks looking brand new, so you're not going to want to do this. You're just going to want to paint them. Okay, I think that's good. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on camera, but you'll be able to see it more after it's all painted and weathered. Okay, now we'll get a gray primer on it. Okay, the gray primer is on. You can see a little bit more of the cracks. Okay, now for an aged concrete, let's use desert sand and slate gray. We'll get our dirty palette. That's probably way too much. That's okay. Now, if you're not going for an aged concrete, you may just want to use straight slate gray or just add a little bit of the desert sand to it. Okay, now we're taking a sponge now we'll rotate it. This prevents getting a pattern from the sponge by rotating it. Now if you want to, you can paint in some areas a little more solid. Okay, now we're going to take some pigments, or you can use pastel chalks. I have a brown and a black. So let's start with the brown. Let me zoom in. You want to go very light and build it up real slow. Okay, now we'll use black. Now you can add cracks with a pencil, but I don't recommend using a regular pencil because it'll leave silver. The graphite from the lead will leave silver on it, and it does not look realistic when you photograph it. So you want to use a black colored pencil. I'm just doing some really tiny lines. Okay, so maybe you have a no parking zone on your layout and you want that curb red. And it doesn't have to be solid. There'd be a lot of paint probably chipping off of it. Now we can add some weeds in the cracks. And if you go to scenicexpress.com, they have different types of weeds that are on sheets. And you just simply pull them off and glue them on. So you can just simply pick some off with your tweezers. Now I recommend gluing them. So let's just take our palette, put a little bit of glue on there, and then for end scale you're probably going to want to cut these. Okay, so I've got some weeds glued in place. Let me show you quick. Now with end scale, you want to try to go pretty small. Let me take the camera off and give you a closer look. Well, as you can see, these make great little end scale sidewalks. And again, in the kit, you'll get all of these. So that's quite a bit of sidewalk for your layout. Okay, let's set this aside and work on today's structure. And here are most of the parts. First we'll start with the walls. Okay, I sprayed both sides with a gray primer. Now I'm going to take iced coffee. It's from Folk Art. Any light brown or light tan. Now it's not real wet, it's not heavy, we're almost dry brushing. We're just creating kind of a natural wood. We're going to put white over the top of this, but we're going to make the white look like it's chipping, and so we want the whatever shows underneath to look like wood. Okay, I've cut a piece of mat board 1/4 of an inch wide, and we're going to put a black line and we're going to paint white above that line, and then I'm going to paint yellow below the line, because this one, we're going to make this, I already have an HO scale version of this kit, and I did black, white, and orange. This one I'm going to do white, black, and yellow, because it's going to be Pennzoil, and those are the Pennzoil colors. The walls are placed at different heights, so be careful, and I'll show you. It started out good, but then it's just fading. I'm going to try, it says fine point rather than this one. It seems to be working. Just be careful, because like I said, not all the walls are the same height. So, okay, that actually worked pretty good. Yeah, I like that. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but you can't just go straight across because the bottom of the wall is not level. You see how it goes up there. And that one is raised up, so you got to go up with it. Okay, now we're going to do white above that. Again, that is a fine point Sharpie. And you can see there's a little bit of a gloss on it. We could spray the wall with a dull coat. Okay, for the white, we're using an off-white light buttermilk. We're lightly dragging our brush over it. We want it to have a peeled paint look. Now you could do yours solid if you want it to look new. You could mask off that black line if you wanted to, just with some like thin tape. Now I think I'll let that dry and then mask so I don't get any white on that bottom section. Okay, now we're going to paint the bottom portion. And we're doing a yellow, but it's kind of a dirty yellow, almost like a yellow ochre. This is called saffron yellow. Now after it's dried, you may notice some spots where you think there's too much of the gray showing through. Have to keep in mind it's end scale, so the chipping would be very tiny. You could go in with a sponge too and lightly go over some of it. Now the black line looks too clean. It's not chipped like the rest of it. So what I've done is I've mixed iced coffee and neutral gray. I wiped my brush off on the towel, so I'm really just kind of dry brushing. Just hitting the edges of the clapboard. Okay, that helped the black so that it's not so new looking. Okay, let's set this aside, and we're going to take this piece here, and we need to cut all these little pieces out and then spray a gray primer. The reason I want to cut them out first is because I want the edges to get painted with the gray, where if you were to spray a gray primer over this now, even both sides, when you cut it out, you may see some of the light material on the edges showing through. So actually, let's cut out all of our pieces. We need to spray a gray primer on everything, but again, I want to cut all this stuff out and then tape it down and spray it with the gray primer. Okay, I've got a gray primer sprayed on all these pieces. Now, I want to put this together before I spray it. Okay, so this piece here, you'll notice one side is darker and one side is lighter. Put the dark side down. Then take one of these. This side here, the side right here, gets glued. One in the center and one on each end. Let me glue it quick and then I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, now this piece gets glued on the back side. So if it's laying down flat, and there's pieces that go straight. Right there. That's what we're going to line it up to. So the bottom of it's going to line up there. So it won't go all the way to the top. So you can see how it lines up with those side pieces. Okay, now we can just spray this entire thing with a gray primer. Okay, we've got a gray primer sprayed on everything. Even our rooftop sign support. Now, let's cut these walls out. And the first thing we're going to do is glue on our trim. You know, I'm getting ahead of myself. I sprayed a primer on all these, but now we've got to paint it all. Okay, I've got all the parts painted. I'll show you quick. The window frames are white. Then you have your windows, which are kind of a rust color. Door frames are white and the window sills are white. This piece down here I used iced coffee. And then I used black and yellow on the doors. And then the big doors I did yellow, and the black ones go over the top of the yellow. And then the big door frames are white. Okay, now we'll cut out these walls and get our window frames and door frames glued onto them. Now again, just take your time when cutting these out. These walls are fragile. Easier to cut from the back. That way you see where the tabs are. Okay, some very tedious work, but all of the frames are glued on. Around the doors, around the windows. And now we have to take our bittersweet chocolate. Not bittersweet chocolate. light buttermilk, and paint the openings. We don't want any of that wood showing. Okay, while our windows are drying, let's paint our back wall. Okay, our back wall is finished. You can see there's a little vent up there. I put in the window. The window frame I had painted white with all the other ones, but if you wanted to, you could take the iced coffee and paint it so it matched the other wood. I'm actually going to leave it white. I think it's fine. Okay, now there is a single piece of strip wood in the kit, which is for the corners. So I just sprayed a gray primer on it. And very important that we cut them the correct size. Okay, we're going to put one on each end of the back wall. Okay, on this one, we're going to run a piece down this side the full length. But on this one, actually we'll put the corner trim up here on this piece. I'll show you in a second. Let's first do this side. Okay, so let's quick recap. We have the gray trim there. We have gray trim on that end. And we have gray trim on both ends of the back wall. Okay, that's perfectly square. Now let's take the back wall and glue it right there. Okay, we'll let that dry a little bit. Okay, now we'll take this wall, this one right here, now we want to check and make sure that everything is square. Let's see. Now we have the front wall that gets glued there, and there's a thin wall on the side. So let's put trim on this side. I'll show you after I get it glued on here. Okay, now we're going to take that and we're going to glue it. Sorry, I'm just checking to make sure that everything is square and that everything lines up before that glue really starts to set up. Okay, so this is what it looks like from the bottom. Okay, we'll set that aside, let it dry. Now for this wall. Okay, we're going to take this back wall and this side wall. We're going to put trim in that corner and put those together just like that. There will be a full diagram in the instructions showing you the order that these walls go in. Okay, now we're going to take the back wall and the wall that we just put the trim on, and we'll glue those together. Okay, let's make sure we file our little nubs on the side, make sure it's nice and flat. I don't know if I can get my block in there. No, I'm not going to try. I'm going to line it up on my grid. Okay, here's where we're at so far. Now we'll glue this one on. Use our grid to make sure it's square. And then that, we'll give it a little bit to dry. But then that gets put on that back corner right there. Okay, the walls are all done. Now I'm going to have to go back in the computer and redraw this because this just does not fit on there. Now let's paint our corner trim. We'll start with white. Now we want to be very careful handling this. I was hoping to do this when it was on the base, but oops, I cut that piece of trim should have gone all the way up there to the top. Okay, I don't know if you can see. I just had to add that gray piece, and now we'll let that dry and then we'll paint it white. Let's get our yellow put on there and then we'll get the black stripe put on there. Okay, I've painted the yellow and the black. Now we're working on the rooftops. I've cut strips of the black construction paper that's provided in the kit, and they're a hair larger than 1/4 of an inch wide. Then we'll slightly overlap the next strip, just a little bit. Okay, then we'll simply take our knife and cut off the extra. All right, let's put a weight on that and let that dry. Okay, now we've got the little one that goes in the front and the back one. Okay, I just removed the trim that I had here because it was cut wrong. I had it come up to here, and then I was going to add another piece to make it the full length, and it just didn't look good. So I took the whole thing off and put in a new piece right there. It goes all the way up to the top. Now there's a piece of trim that goes along the top. Let's grab that and we'll paint that and glue that on. Okay, I just cut the piece and I cut it slightly longer so there's a little bit of an overhang on both ends, and I filed the top of that so it's nice and flat. Okay, we got a thin bead of glue. We'll wipe the back clean and then we'll place this on. We'll let this dry, and then we'll paint it white. Okay, we're going to take our roof card, now that it's all dry, and we're going to rough it up a little bit. Now you want to go down, so you can see the lines go that way. So we want to go the opposite direction and pull down. Okay, after we get them glued on, we can do a little bit of dry brushing over them and add some pastels to them, or pigments. Okay, let's go ahead and get this one glued on. Make sure there's an even amount of overhang. Now you could paint the back side of the wall there white or leave it gray. Okay, now now we need to get some signs put on it, do some weathering to the roof. Then we will get our rooftop sign put on there, and then get the actual sign glued on the front. Alright, we're getting close to wrapping this up. Okay, I cut a new foundation. It's in the computer, so all the kits will be correct. It was my fault. I forgot to add for the thickness the 1/16 of an inch around. So now we'll just glue this in place. Okay, so it should line up perfectly on the back like it does. I just did some dry brushing with slate gray. Now we can just take some pigments, even a brown. We have some other vents and smokestacks that go on here, and we'll add some more pigments when we put those on. Okay, here's our signs. So we'll get these cut out and get them glued on. Okay, I've cut out all the signs and glued them on. Next, I cut out the sign for the roof, the big sign. Now take your time. I'll actually put in a couple of them in case you screw up one. The key to the signs, all of the paper signs, after you get them cut out, take a dark gray or a dark brown marker and go over the edges of the paper. I'm using dark brown because I want to give it kind of a rusted metal look. But if you want your sign to look brand new, just use a gray marker. Be careful, you want to go kind of quick, because if you hold it there for too long, it'll bleed, which is okay if you're doing a rusted metal sign, but if it's new, you don't want that gray bleeding into it. I'm going to take some burnt sienna. Well, first, let me glue this on, and then I'm just going to put a little bit of rust on it. We're getting close. Next, we'll spray a primer on all of our detail parts, and then get those glued on. You want to make sure that your dots are really tiny. Now we'll just add a little bit more rust with pigments. Okay, I lined up the middle post of the sign with the middle line of the center door. Alright, now let's get all of our details painted. Okay, I wanted to show you the details before I paint them. So you have 2 smokestacks, a vent, 6 tires, and 5 barrels. Okay, I'll get a gray primer sprayed on these, and then we'll get them painted and glued on. Alright, the structure is finished. I put a little N-scale vehicle next to it just to show you the scale. It is so fun bringing these little structures to life. And I really like the color change that I made to it. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I am thoroughly enjoying building N-scale. It is so small and just requires more patience. Everything is so delicate, it needs to be handled with care. And I just really am attracted to that. And I just really enjoy building these small kits. All right, well, remember, if you are a Patreon member, you receive a discount on the kit. All right, and again, a huge thank you to all of my Patreon members. Incredible. It just keeps growing and growing. You guys are the greatest. All right, well, until next time, stay motivated and happy modeling, everybody.